closer and I can get you. Closer. Closer. And the water. Gotta come closer, okay? I can't throw that far. Oh, look. This piece is not for you.
Any fish down in the water?
This is a good time to go fishing. What? Go along.
Two-car discount can
Hey,
save you money
Johanna.
on insurance.
What are you doing?
Allstate sure saves me.
Watching
I can use the money.
Noah, dinner! Josie and Robert Dion and John Snyder on the half-hour comedy hour. Now that's our kind of music.
Little red light means it's on.
Well, we'll have to put the rice in. What else you have? Rock.
Arm around Aunt Helen. Put your arm around Aunt Helen, your guy. Like that. No, go fast. Go fast. Okay, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. 1, 2, 3. Cheese.
Okay. Boy, now Dick's the one with the equipment.
Are we in there? Oh, are you doing that? Everybody wave. It's movies. Ooh, it's on TV.
Oh, on every one of Bob's Helen's movies, she's... Bob says, for heaven's sake, everyone... Well, she got in the way.
Johanna, don't make things. And guys, be pleasant in these pictures, okay? Come on, be pleasant. Stop it. All right.
Back porch of Helen's, looking out on the woods, down by the bird feeders. That tower, I think that was for a television antenna.
What? Whose garage is that?
And Helen's.
What tractor's in it?
She's just got a tractor they use for snow plowing.
She does?
Tell me the date, guys, so we'll all know what it is.
Today is
Thursday?
Thursday, July, I forget,
Well,
27th,
what year?
1983.
Okay. Where'd Helen go?
She went in to get her camera. She went in to get her camera. By the time she gets it figured out...
Don't do it. A picture, you take it in your house. Just take a picture. Hold on. Right through the TV.
Here, I'll take a picture of you guys.
Well, at Mimi's house, the year is 1983. Has a white car over there. That's her house with all the bricks, and it's white porch with a big hole in the street. That's
You're on. Come on, let's go in, guy.
What are you taking a move? In the room? That thing working?
yeah, whenever the red light's flashing.
What is it? What's he doing?
Taking a movie.
Oh, for God. He's sitting there talking.
Papa,
have
You
here.
weren't supposed to see those.
Oh,
You
I
might have
wasn't.
gotten them for a present.
Oh, well, I can still get him for a present.
You wouldn't know you had them if you didn't see them, would you?
Come in here, Daddy. I want to take these back. This is for posterity. We'll have these forever on
Yeah.
our thing. This is my daddy. 80 years old this spring. 80 years old.
Where do you want to put this?
Start playing.
Here, behind
Right.
me.
Does it take sound too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we're in Lawrenceburg, New Mexico. And we're getting ready to get into the plane to go to Tucson. We stayed at a Best Western last night, American hotel. And we flew over El Paso. We stopped in Kerrville. We're gonna get gas and take off now. And it's gonna take us about an hour. Then it's gonna take us another 3 hours to get to California.
It's August 21st, 1983. We left Houston yesterday amid the destruction of Hurricane, what was the name? Alicia. And we stopped once for gas in Kerrville and also at Fabens outside of El Paso, and then came on in at dusk here and landed at Lawrenceburg, New Mexico, and which is out in the desert of southern Mexico, southern New Mexico, about 60 miles north of Old Mexico. I'll swing the camera around here in a minute and you can see that there's not much here. Last night we were picked up at the airport by a woman who's here helping out on a part-time basis named Grace the Ace. That's all she told us her name was, but she's an old-time air show pilot. She now flies a Piper Cub in air shows. In fact, her Cubs, you can see it through the crack in the hangar doors, and I'll pan the camera around here in a minute and you'll be able to see that. And she told us a number of stories as she took us in the airport wreck into the motel. Lawrenceburg is right on Interstate 10, which is about the only reason for its existence. It's also on a railroad track that runs major east-west railroad. And in fact, we saw the Border Patrol this morning out checking out the bunch of railroad cars full of trucks and cars, I guess, looking for illegals who might be trying to get a free trip to the east. Guy, you tell them about what we're going to do today, and I'll go back to the camera and pan it around a little bit.
Can I do that?
No, let me do that. Keep talking.
All right. We should get to California about around 6 o'clock or so this evening. Just, I don't know about really what the time is, just tonight. And we're going to go to Tucson and mess around in Tucson a little bit, Arizona. Now? Okay. In the hangar you can see the yellow Piper Cub. That is Grace the Ace's Piper Cub, and you could just see a crack of it just through the hangar. And over to the left you could see the old airport car. The other night...
We're looking due west, Helen.
We're looking due west. The other night, this car always steams. She said the other night it started steaming. She said it always does that.
I'm pulling around to the south.
Okay.
To the north, rather.
Now you're looking out north, out to the sea and the hills. And you can see him over the tail. That's... Is that him?
I can't hear.
And you can see this interstate out there. Interstate 10.
And we'll keep swinging all the way around.
Okay. Could we keep on going? Okay, now we're looking at the east. You can see out there where the mountains are.
We're going to be looking southeast.
We're going to southeast now. You can see the big mountains out there, the windsock. We're looking south now. Now we're looking south. You can see the hills. That's out there is Mexico. You can see the interstate again.
Camera's rolling,
Okay.
and we ought to be getting audio through the headsets. We've just taken.
This is 29 Quebec. We're just about over.
We just took off from Lordsburg, New Mexico, and we're flying over a couple of dry lake beds just west of Lordsburg. And we're en route to Cochise County Airport, which is near Wilcox. Actually, we're en route to Tucson, climbing through, we're going to climb up to 8,500. Pretty dry and flat out in this part of Arizona. We're about 50 miles from the Mexican border. And I've got the wide angle fisheye on there. I guess, I don't know how well you can see, but there's quite a few mountains around here, but quite a bit of flat land in between. Check the zoom, make sure it's all the way down.
Dad.
Uh-huh.
Are we in Arizona?
Nope, we won't be in Arizona for, well, yeah, we're almost in Arizona. When we get past these couple of dry lakes, we'll be in Arizona.
Or these mountain range?
Yeah, these mountains are right on the Arizona border, so just a few minutes. We're pretty much flying along Interstate 10, which weaves around the mountain ranges. We're going to cut across a couple of them here, get over towards Tucson. Pretty nice day, nice and clear.
No clouds.
Nope, sure aren't. We'll be leveling off here in a few minutes at 8,500.
Dad, can I try leveling this off?
Okay.
What do you do? Just pull back?
Okay, I'll tell you what you do. When the altimeter gets on 5, the big hand gets on 5, keep the wings level. Just start pushing forward till the wings are look at the horizon, parallel with the horizon, right about there. And also the little airplane here is going to be right on the bar. And as it speeds up, you're going to have to push forward harder. And as you do that, you just roll this trim wheel forward so you don't have to push on it anymore. Okay, go ahead, start rolling it forward. Roll it forward. Okay, just see if that does it. You got to use pressure to hold the wings level. And we're coming over this little mountain range by the town of Stearns. Fly heading of 250. Turn. Yeah, remember which way you got to turn to the right to get to that. And I'll roll some more trim in there until you get it a little better. And I'll bring the RPMs back to 2,200. And we're about 19.5 inches. And we'll start leaning it out a little bit more. Okay, we can't see Tucson yet, but we can see the large mountain range. Goes up to about as high as we are, just west of, or just east of Tucson. Off in that direction on the horizon. I don't know, I guess if you can see it in the lens. That's where Tucson is. We'll be coming into Tucson south of that range going over the town of Benson, about 20 miles north of Tombstone.
Getting ready to go into Arizona.
Yeah, we'll be in Arizona.
As soon as we cross these mountains, get a feel with this mountain range.
I'll see if you can even, it might even have a mark somewhere where you can see the line, but I doubt it. Get our, here we got the camera back on now, and we're climbing through 10,000 feet, going up to 10.5 to try to get out of some of the little more turbulent air. We're over Wilcox, Arizona, which is a well-known area. Geologically, it's because it's located on Wilcox Playa. A playa is a dry lake, and we'll show you with maybe with the camera here in a few minutes what a playa looks like, but it's basically a dry lake bed that only during the real rainy season it'll have a little water in it, and then the water dries up. Of course, they drill wells around it, use the water for irrigation, so there's a fair amount of farming in this valley. It's nice and flat.
Is that Wilcox down there?
That's the town of Wilcox, There's Wilcox Airport over there. We're still following basically Interstate 10, which follows one of the older highways through this area. which I don't know what it is. Taking some still pictures of Wilcox Playa, and also out towards the northwest, which is generally the Phoenix area. What's that, guy?
Nothing. Dad, where are we?
With the wide angle, I'll turn the camera a little bit out this way. See, I'm not sure you can see that much at a distance because the wide angle lens distorts things a certain amount.
Dad, but it won't look good without a white balance.
Yeah, probably be all right.
Last time you did it.
Well, but at long distances like this, it's not going to make that much difference. And we're now shooting out to the north over Wilcox. Look out over the back window.
Right down there.
Just in the bottom, perhaps you can see Wilcox Airport. Pretty sandy out in here. And I'll come back around and aim out to the... That's pretty much looking out to the north. And I'll come around here. Yeah, guy, lower your head, little guy's doing a pretty good job keeping the wings level. That bang around you here is my earphone banging into the camera. That right there. And it's pretty, it seems hazy. Of course, we can see 100 miles out here, but the area we're looking out in now is pretty much out towards the Tucson area. We're going to, following the route we are, we're going to go a little bit south of the peaks you see there in the foreground, and then turn around and fly on into the Gila River Valley, which is what goes into Tucson. Go ahead and run the zoom in here and get a little bit better shot of some of the closer mountains. And let me swing around. It's beginning to get a little bumpy. You can see a round field, which is typical out here in West Texas and New Mexico and Arizona. They irrigate with rotating sprinkler systems, so the only thing that, of course, is green is a round part of the field. In fact, that one of those down there I can see has a sprinkler system on right now because I can see some water coming out of it, but it probably doesn't show up too well. I'm going to go around here by the doorposts, and you're looking at the edge of Wilcox Playa, and it's all pretty much sand. It looks like it might be a little muddy around the edges, still has some water in it, but of course the wintertime they'll get more water. They've had some pretty big storms out in this part of the country the last few weeks, so it's probably got a little more rain in it than normally. And we're looking off to the Cochise Mountains south of here. That's where the Mescalero, or the Chiricahua Apache rather, spent their time when the white man was chasing them around. They went up into those mountains, and the area today is called Cochise Stronghold because it's was so hard to go up there and get him out of there. Wilcox, just to the north down there is, I think maybe you can see Interstate 10. I'm looking at an open pit mine. I don't know what that's, I'm sure a copper mine. I don't know what the name of it is, and I'll go ahead and zoom in, and perhaps it's not too bumpy. You can get a little better idea what it looks like. Pretty good size mine, although nothing, not near the size of the Bingham Canyon mine in south of Salt Lake City, which maybe if we get up that way, we'll take some pictures of it. It's to the right now to a heading of about 270, which from here pretty much takes us into the Tucson area. Try to get the camera up here high enough to where I can, perhaps you can see out there off the nose, well, way out in the distance. And I'll go ahead and zoom. I'm not sure this is going to show up, but you can see a pointed peak out there. Well, that's roughly where Tucson is. Shows up very well on the video either, but let me zoom a little bit, but you're looking at Interstate 10.
where it swings around south of some rugged area, and it's pretty much paralleling. Of course, it follows the load route, parallels some gullies and valleys and things. Well, right now we're taking a picture of Tombstone, Arizona. Tombstone was a well-known mining town, and since the price of gold and other minerals have come up, you can see a fairly active mining area, which is now an open pit mine next to town. At one time, all their mining back in the old days was all underground mined, and in fact, many of the mine entrances are near that open pit mine out in the hills, but the mine shafts and all actually were underneath the town. We're at 10,500 feet, which is about 6,000 feet above the ground, so everything doesn't show up too well. I'll zoom in one time, just if it's not too bumpy, again, try to get a little idea what the town looks like.
Well, you know, there'll be a Cessna on your left as you make the right.
And right now we're looking straight towards Tucson. We're about 80 miles, I suppose, from Tucson, and if we can do it, we're going to fly over Tucson International and Davis-Monthan Air Base, and we'll try to take some video of the boneyard, and then we're flying up to Marina Air Park, northwest of Tucson, where there is a commercial boneyard for airplanes, where a lot of the airlines store their airplanes, and airplanes are there for resale. Well, we're just north of Tucson, where there's a lot of traffic, and we didn't get a chance to get the camera out, take a look at Davis-Monthan.
Traffic I gave you is talking to Davis-Monthan Tower. He's 3,500 feet going inbound to DM, about your 130 now and 3.
What airport's over there?
I don't know.
United 385, we got the field in sight. United 385 is cleared to visual approach, 11 miles.
And we're looking out towards Marina Air Park, where we're going to stop. It's about 30 miles northeast of, or northwest rather, of Tucson, which is on the way to Phoenix. Begin to get a little turbulence. We're at Marina Air Park. Some of the pictures earlier, I forgot to have the microphone plugged in, so they probably were kind of quiet. Marina Air Park's used by a group of skydivers, but the major business is Evergreen International, who flies a lot of jet charter, rebuilds large air carrier type airplanes, and also is responsible for all the storage and maintenance of the airplanes here. As I come back down on the ramp, you can see a little better some of the airplanes parked here on at least temporary storage. Right on the head of the line are a couple of Braniff 727s. In various other airplanes, 727s, Evergreen has an Electra of their own stored here. Down at the end are two DC-10s and a Lockheed 1011. The DC-10 with the blue top is an Air Florida DC-10. And they're obviously storing it here until business gets better. It's dry and cheaper to store here than at most major airports.
As I swing across the runway, you can begin to see the main storage area where a lot of the airplanes are here until they go to the scrap heap.
Yeah, the skydiving.
However, some of them will be here until somebody buys them, usually a foreign country, and they'll be refurbished by Evergreen and then used again. You can see a bunch of two-engine Convaires out there parked.
At Marine Air Park, and there are some skydivers that have just finished their diving. You could see them out there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 skydivers all coming down. They dived out of a beach, a twin beach. We walked around through the airport and over to the little cafe that they have that is owned by Evergreen too. They have a motel, the air base, which used to be within the Air Force base. You can see them. They're getting ready. They're landing now. The first one just landed. The rest of them will come down. 8 skydivers. We just saw 3 other ones before this. Jumping. And you can see them. They're all landing now.
Evergreen's main maintenance facility. Evergreen operates the DC-8s that United Parcel Service flies around the country. Evergreen owns them, has them, some of them with new engines, painted up in UPS colors, but then flies them, does the maintenance here, and fly out of Louisville, Kentucky. There's a 727 there in bare metal that's belongs to UPS. It's going to have their colors painted on it. And that's a DC-10 that they're repainting for, they told me, for some other country. Evening, and we're in Corona, California, which is on the eastern edge of the Los Angeles basin. Temperature's about 70 degrees. Corona's a very interesting airport, got a lot of home build and older airplanes. And as soon as I landed, 4 or 5 people, all who have Cessna 180s, came out to greet me, and we stood around for an hour now talking about airplanes. Much to Guy's dismay, because he's ready to go eat. There's the car right there that they loaned us at the airport. We're gonna drive it into Long Beach in the morning. We're just gonna leave the airplane here and go take a look at the Spruce Goose. We stopped at this airport because it's got about the cheapest gas. Well, we're at the Spruce Goose in Queen Mary. It's Monday morning, and we got here a little early. It's just now 9:04, and the ticket office for the Spruce Goose in Queen Mary doesn't open till 9:30, and then none of the exhibits themselves open till 10. It's a fairly nice day here, about 68 or 70 degrees, a little bit of an overcast out over the harbor, and that's the dome that the Spruce Goose itself is in, and then it's parked next to the Queen Mary itself, and you can just see part of the Queen Mary and the smokestack here in the distance. I'm going to go ahead and put on the wide-angle lens so you can get a little better idea of what it looks like around here. Wide-angle lens, you can see the entire dome. We're looking south out towards the harbor, and over towards the beyond that little tree in the center of the picture is the harbor. I don't believe you can see much. As I go back looking to the left, you can see a little bit more of the Queen Mary itself. And as I pan around, you can see all the little gift shops and places to take the tourist money that they have around here. And you can get a view of the beautiful, let me get the focus here, car that we got at the airport, right there, 71 Chevrolet. However, the price is right. We're not paying anything for it. One of the Queen Mary propellers. We're inside the dome now looking at the Spruce Goose. The light's not very good in here, and as you may be able to tell, they continue to change the lighting to give some sort of a dramatic effect. The airplane itself is pure white. It's painted with a fire-resistant white paint. Was done for display purposes, and they have a series of colored lights which change colors from time to time. As you can see now, the brighter lights are coming on, and I'll leave the camera in this position, and hopefully the even brighter white lights will come on. I'm using the wide-angle fisheye lens, which is the only way to get all of the airplane, and as you can see, I'm having a hard time getting it all in as it is. Let me pan around and aim up towards the tail. Now they have the white lights on the airplane, and then while they're doing that, I'll pan around here and try to get a little bit better picture of it. It's hard to really appreciate the size of the airplane. The biggest airplane most people are familiar with, the 747, has a wingspan a little under 200 feet, and the wingspan on the Spruce Goose is 315 feet, and is a fully cantilevered wing, no external support at all. I've taken off the fisheye lens, and hopefully with this get a little better detail on some of the parts of the airplane. There's the tail. The tail itself is bigger than most other airplanes. They're beginning to change the lighting again. Let me zoom in on the flap hinge, and just beyond that are a couple of things. I'm not sure what those are. There's not much on the outside of the airplane. There are a few portholes. There's one of the hatchways. You can see the word experimental on top of it. Coming around this way, and you can see the float itself is about the size of a 25 to 30 foot sailboat. We're now by the entrance to the dome. You can get a little bit of better idea of what the thing looks like. Again, with the wide-angle lens. It's really pretty impressive. The two black things underneath the most inboard engine are where they've cut holes, it looks like, in the side to draw in some ventilation through the inside of the airplane to help keep the humidity down. One of the guides here said one of the problems they're having is getting an adequate control on the humidity within this large dome with all the number of people that have been coming in. Taking the wide-angle lens off again, and I'll try to get a little better close-up of the cockpit area by zooming in on it. Can't see from this side, and I'm not sure I'll be able to see from the other side, but they have a wax figure of Howard Hughes sitting in the pilot seat, and it's a very lifelike figure. It's not a typical mannequin you see in museums. The engines themselves are biggest piston engines ever made. They're the same basic engines that are in the Super Constellation and the DC-7B. They're 28-cylinder Pratt & Whitney 4-row radial engines. There's a hatch open on the top of the airplane. which you can see just next to the inboard engine. And I don't know why they have that open, probably for ventilation, but that obviously was one way to get in and out of it when it was sitting in the water. We're out right in front of the nose of the Goose, and I've zoomed in on the cockpit area, and you can see the figure of Howard Hughes sitting in the cockpit seat and just the edge of the viewing platform that people use to, you can't actually get inside the airplane, but you can walk along the side and look in the cockpit. And also they've replaced part of the side of the airplane skin with some plastic panels, so you can look inside the upper part of the flight deck and see the chairs where the various flight engineers would have sat had they have continued the testing program on the airplane. Then you go down one floor and walk in a bridge-like structure that goes into the side of the airplane in the middle of the cargo bay, and you can see the size of the cargo bay itself, which is pretty enormous. I didn't carry the video camera up there when we, because of the too many flights of stairs. I mean, just turn over here and you can see the people going up into the viewing area. So I don't have any video of the inside of the airplane. I would go back up, but the line is right in front of us, as you can see.
Where's Zoom?
Okay, you're on. The guy's taking pictures now. We got the wide-angle lens back on, and you can see a little more of the area again. We'll go around and get some pictures from the other side, and then we're going to head for the Queen Mary. It's August 23rd, 1983. In the morning, we've landed at Mojave Airport in the California desert. Mojave Airport is about 20 miles west of Edwards Air Force Base and is right on the edge of the Edwards Restricted Area and Test Range. Mojave is an abandoned or ex-military airfield that's been taken over by a number of operations, the largest of which is Flight Systems, that do a lot of experimental work, and you're looking at a fleet of T-34, T-33s and F-86 1950s vintage jet fighters and trainers. They operate these in various test operations for avionics companies as well as the military. Today when we landed, just as we taxied in, they had the first flight of the Fox jet, which is a small trainer version of a converted T-33 in which they replace the engine in the T-33 with two fuselage-mounted smaller engines and do extensive work on the thing. And it just made a low pass along with a Lear chase plane a few minutes ago, and we're waiting for it to come back to get another picture. In the meantime, let me zoom in here and you get a little better idea of some of the hardware around this place. Those are T-33s. Behind that, and that's a Vampire jet. Behind it's an F-100. Behind it is a Boeing 707. Several home builders are also here. Burt Rattan's aircraft factory is on the field. And just a few minutes ago, two of his twin-engine Defiants landed. And let me unzoom. Here's the airplane. The one in the lead is the X-jet. I had my color filter on inside, so my colors there probably weren't very good. I'm now looking across the field at Boneyard, where they've got a lot of airplanes in various pieces. Those are C-133s, I believe. Large cargo planes that are just parked there. And next to them, it's cut up DC-8, and those are parked Convair 880s or 990s. That one looks like a DC-8. Back over this way are a number of airplanes that are here in storage, similar to what they do in Tucson, evidently. both chase. We missed the landing. The plane came in and landed on the runway kind of behind the hangars and is now taxiing in, and the Lear chase plane just overflew us and landed and is taxiing in behind it.
Is that the Lear?
No, the first one was the Fox jet, and the second one was the Lear.
Can I take a picture of it?
Nice looking little plane, isn't it? Another shot of the Flight Systems flight line. That's an A4 in the foreground and an F-100 right behind it. Trucks are still coming in from the landing of the Fox jet. We're in front of the Rattan aircraft factory, and that's a Defiant twin-engine variation of the Long Easy, I guess. Swing around and look at another one they've got parked here. This is a Rattan-built Long Easy sitting out in front of the Rattan aircraft factory. You probably can't hear me. There's a Lear behind us taxiing. Well, he's past us now. There are several interesting jets parked over here. One of which you can see the nose sticking out of is a civilian-owned F-104. Supposedly, last I heard, belonged to Darrell Grinemeyer, who was trying to set the world's world's speed record. He had tried a few years ago under the Red Baron Racing Team sponsorship to set the record in an F-104 out here at Mojave and crashed. And just beyond that airplane, you see some red and white wreckage, which is the other F-104 that he bailed out of. And there's just a few pieces left. That Lear is one of the chase planes, and he just started his takeoff roll and for some reason pulled the power back. Another picture of Rattan's Defiant. B-25 sitting out here next to the other jets at Mojave. And there's another view of the aircraft storage line.
Just passing through a little notch in some of the mountains here on the east side of the Mojave Desert en route to the Las Vegas area. We're about 30 miles south of Las Vegas right now. And in fact, up ahead, you can see this in the bounciness, is Lake Mead. We're going to go ahead and fly over Lake Mead and take a look at Hoover Dam. There's quite a bit of water in the desert from the amount of rain they've had over the last few weeks. Through the desert valley up towards Las Vegas. Las Vegas is about 25 miles in the distance. You probably can't make it out. It's just almost to the horizon, but it's before the mountains you see up ahead, and I think you can see the interstate branching off going up towards Las Vegas. We're going to pass by east of Las Vegas over towards Hoover Dam and the Lake Mead area. Smooth it out a little bit. I'll try to zoom in and see if you can get a little bit better picture of where Las Vegas is. You see much of that. We're looking out to the south now. In the middle of this valley is a dry lake, and just in the bottom of the picture you can see some water, which is unusual. But with all the rain they've had lately, some of the dry lakes around here do get water in them, and then after a couple of months' time it all drains or evaporates off and leaves the nice flat dry lake bed again. For that Edwards Air Force Base is built on the edge of, and they use the dry lake bed whenever it's not wet.
That's 2 Echo Sierra, if you would, keep the freeway a mile and a half.
They use it for runways because they've got one runway there, runway 35, that's about 10 miles long, and the space shuttle used it during a couple of the early flights.
Climb unrestricted 15,000, and I'll get that left turn for you shortly.
Guy's been sleeping for the last half hour. I'll wake him up before we get to Hoover Dam though, because he'll want to see that. I woke him up a little earlier to show him a solar-powered boiler with a bunch of mirrors around that they have over by Barstow, California, but he wasn't too interested.
Yes, sir, it is leaving 6.6. Roger, Republic 863, turn left, heading 110, receiving Prescott, suitable for navigation, proceed direct, unrestricted.
I don't know if you can see this very well. It's kind of bumpy and smooth right now, but what you're looking at is Hoover Dam, and in the bottom of the picture is water going over the spillway. First time, I think, in its history that they've had water going over the spillway.
Descend to maintain 6,000, expect to
There's a picture of the backside of the dam, and a little better picture of the spillways on either side. It's a flat top mountain right next to the lake.
One Whiskey Mike, you need to fly east, or over, or fairly east of
and it's a mesa capped by lava.
Okay, we'll turn a little bit to
the black rock all over the top of the thing is the salt.
25, the banana's no longer a factor. It'll be north of localizer.
Guys' allergies are getting to him even out here.
Visual 25. And to 75 Alpha, climb to 7,500.
Lava, basalt is lava after it's solidified.
Cessna, been moving to 12 o'clock, 5 miles eastbound.
Now that it's not quite as bumpy as it was, I'll take a shot over back towards Las Vegas. You're looking just about due west. And I'll zoom in a little bit, see if we can...
Hands of 75 Alpha, what's your altitude now? 75 Alpha.
Not too bumpy, I think the picture's still a little shaky. Now looking out the other way, just about due east on a portion of Lake Mead.
25. Okay. And you still got him, right? Affirmative, sir. Okay, Janet 10 Whiskey, contact.
And not too far, we're not too far away from the Grand Canyon. Lake Mead is formed by damming up the Colorado River as it comes out of the Grand Canyon. And when we get to the end of Lake Mead, which is another 30 miles or so, we'll be at the beginning of what's considered the Grand Canyon. We're standing out on top of the Ponsicut Plateau near Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. We're at the Bryce Canyon Airport itself on top of the plateau, which is an airport that's been here a long time but it's not used very much. Behind me is a interesting hangar. It's a log cabin hangar made out of logs. It's one of 2 in the world made out of logs. The other one is in South Africa. The hangar was built back in the mid-30s by the WPA, along with the help from the county, I guess, and that's when the airport itself was first put in. WPA did a lot of work on all the national parks, both in the east and the west. The hiking trails in the Grand Canyon and in Bryce Canyon, the hangar, lodges, many of those things were built by WPA. We flew in here last night from
Well, we were in Tehachapi, then we're at Mojave, and landed here about 6 o'clock after a gas stop in Cedar City, which is about 40 miles from here as the crow flies, but in a minute I'll pan around and you can see the mountains. We had to go climb to 10.5, plus come around some of the mountains to get here. The airport itself, just a minute, guy wants to turn the camera around. We'll do that in a second. The airport itself is in a fairly broad, flat valley that slopes down to the north. But as I said, there are a bunch of hills around it. Elevation of the airport is 7,500 feet, and the rim of Bryce Canyon is at 8,000 feet. We stayed at a little motel across the road last night called the Pink Cliffs Motel, and it's named for some exposure rocks about 20 miles to the northeast called the Pink Cliffs. I'll take a picture of those in a minute, but they don't show up very well except in the afternoon with the westerly setting sun shining on them. Then they're very pink. And this morning we got up, rented bicycles, and rode into the national park itself. It's about 4 miles, which isn't too bad, but it's also 500 feet higher in elevation than the motel, so we had a little bit of pedaling and pumping. A couple of hills we had to get off and walk up. But after we hung around the park a little bit and had a continental breakfast, we came on back. Well, coming back, of course, we had to use the brakes to keep from going too fast. We coasted almost all the way back to the motel. Weather here has been real nice. It's probably about 70 right now, but the wind's blowing pretty good, so you get a little bit of a wind chill factor. Last night it got down to about 45, I would guess. Well, you can't see me, there's a guy been working on a backhoe. This airport has been almost abandoned for a number of years with a little bit of operations off and on. There is a flight service station that's here, and it's here primarily just as a weather observation post. There's a VOR up about 5 miles away up on top of one of the mountains. But I'm sure this flight service station will close because he can't have more than 2 or 3 people stopping in talking to him. He gets a lot of people calling him on the radio, however, since he can give them a good idea what the weather's like in the plateaus. This part of central Utah, unlike Colorado and some of those places, is mountainous. But a lot of the mountains are plateaus, and that is, they're fairly flat on top, which is where we are. We're 3,000 feet higher than Cedar City, 20 miles away, but as you'll see in a minute, in a very nice broad valley that's used primarily for most of its national forest, and then there's some farming, mostly cattle grazing, I think. Let me get on the camera and turn it around, and you can get an idea what the place looks like. Get everything loosened up here. There's the flight service station, and in the background just a small hill. We're looking off to the north now, and we'll be taking off in the opposite direction. Actually slightly uphill, but there's pretty strong winds, or otherwise we'd go ahead and take off downhill if we had even a slight tailwind, since it's a downslope takeoff and the ground continues to drop. But with the wind we have, there's no problem, and we're lightly loaded. I'm now got the camera on the Pink Cliffs, and as I said, they probably don't show up very pink right now because of it's just about noon right now, and that doesn't really show the color. I'll go ahead and zoom in, and perhaps you can get a little better view of them. The Pink Cliffs are cut into the Ponsauget Plateau, and at the top of that plateau is probably at about 11,000 feet, so it's pretty high. Let me go ahead and bring the camera on around, and you can see a little bit of the runway. And as I'm coming around here now, the beautiful Pink Cliffs Motel that we stayed in shows up. And beyond the Pink Cliffs are those hills up higher, is where Bryce Canyon National Park itself is. You really can't see much of it from here because most of it is on the easterly slope and faces the east, so you really don't see it till you walk right up on the edge and look down to the east. I'll zoom in on beyond the Pink Cliffs Motel, and you can see some of the rock. The stuff you're looking at on the skyline is probably about 10 or 15 miles away, maybe as much as 20. And I'll finish panning around, looking due south. Local vehicles or two. That's one of the ridges we had to clear last night. That ridge is 11,500 feet. And so obviously we didn't want to have to climb high enough to get over it. Plus, when the wind's blowing at all in the mountains, you get an awful lot of turbulence. We're going to have a lot of turbulence today just from the fact of all the cumulus clouds you see. Plus, when you get a strong breeze from any direction, you get a lot of turbulence, particularly within 1,500 to 2,500 feet of the ground. I'll swing around a little bit more and you can see another ridge. And that one also goes up to almost 12,000 feet. That was the one we really needed to clear. Now, I could have come through a kind of a notch between the two, but I took the Flatlanders route and went a little further east, or further north before I cut back to the southeast, and came in that way. Even on the tripod here, my camera's shaking a little bit. The only two other airplanes parked here, one's a 206 in the background that belongs to one of the people working here, and then there's a long easy that's been parked here a couple of days. That's long easies and very easies. Normally take a lot of runway, and I'm sure at this elevation, unless he's got a light gas load, he uses a lot of the runway, although the wind we have today will certainly help you. And the runway up here is about 7,000 feet long, so it's a pretty good sized runway. We're going to get in the plane now, and we're going to head north to the San Pete Valley in central Utah. Probably stop there for gas because they have 80 octane. San Pete Valley is an area I worked in when I was at Ohio State. I spent a summer out there doing field work, and I'm going to take some pictures of that. Then after we get gas, we're going to fly further north to a little town of Thistle, another area I did field work in, but it's a place where this spring, during all the heavy rain they had out in this part of the country, they had a landslide dam up one of the valleys which completely closed off the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad and the major highway, and has formed a lake, putting the entire town of Thistle underwater. And I kind of wanted to see what that looked like. If the turbulence isn't too bad, we'll try to get a little video from the airplane, but it's pretty hard unless it's almost rock steady.
Dad. Dad.
Guy wanted to take some pictures, so he's got the camera and he's going to do a little videography. And why don't you turn it back this way, Guy, and you can look down the runway, down the direction. Well, it's not the direction we're going to take off, but it's the direction we're going to turn around and go. Camera's up on a tripod, so it's a little tough for him to reach. Those are as I mentioned, the pink cliffs, and then further off above that are some white rock, which is called the White Cliffs. Well, we'll go ahead and shut it down now and load up.
Well, we're taking some pictures without the viewfinder because I don't have it on, and so I'm not exactly sure what I'm shooting, but it's not too bumpy right now. You're getting a little bit of a shot of Bryce Canyon itself. We're heading northeast right now, and we're going to point the camera out in that general direction. It's the Bryce Canyon Airport out in the valley itself. And I'll point it up over the nose, try to hold it a little steady, and you get an idea what the countryside looks like around here. That's the pink cliffs off in the distance. Probably get airsick watching this. Key camera out because it was fairly smooth, and just as we said that, we're getting into a few bumps. We're coming around what's called Point of the Mountain, about halfway between Provo and Salt Lake City, and flying over the Salt Lake State Prison. I got the camera pointing out pretty much due north out into the Salt Lake Valley. See Salt Lake City. We're going to land at Salt Lake number 2 airport, which is south of the municipal airport. Famous airport though, because Texas International, when they first started flying into Salt Lake, mistook it for Salt Lake International and landed there. I'll bring the camera around. Now I'm looking out towards the Great Salt Lake. which you may be able to make out the blue area in the distance. These are the Wasatch Mountains that run along a mountain range that runs north-south on the east side of the Salt Lake Valley, and where a lot of the better-known ski resorts are. Swing around here, and I'm going to try to swing around the other way. And off over there, we're looking west, you can see a bunch of piles of dirt. What that is mine rubble or waste, bumpy, from the Bingham Canyon copper mine, which is the world's largest open pit copper mine. And you can't even see the hole itself, but it's behind all those piles. There used to be a mountain there, and they've got...
It's Wednesday evening, August 24th, and we're in Wendover, Nevada, or rather Wendover, Utah. You're looking off towards Nevada, and we're on the old Wendover airfield, which during World War II was the air base out here in the Nevada Bonneville Desert that the Air Force used to train to drop the atomic bomb on Japan. Colonel Paul Tibbetts' squadron, whatever the number was, trained at Wendover for a number of months using various targets here on the Salt Lake Valley gunnery range and bombing range on either side of the Interstate 80 as targets. You're looking off to the west, and just a few hundreds of feet beyond those buildings is the Nevada line, and in fact this town is nothing, would be nothing except the fact that there are about 4 or 5 casinos just across the state line in Nevada. In fact, the little town is called State Line. On the Utah side, it's called Wendover. On the Nevada side, it's State Line. I'd always wanted to come to Wendover just to look at an old abandoned military base. And you can see some old wooden buildings there, and that tower was probably the parachute loft where they hung and parachutes to dry and to inspect them. We expected there to not be a whole lot of activity when we got in here, even though we are next to several gunnery ranges used by a number of the bases. However, if I pan the camera around down at the other end of the ramp, and as I zoom in you can see this better, whoops, it's an Air Force squadron of F-15s that have been based here for 3 months. And in fact, I just asked one of them coming in on the radio about their activities, and they're using the same hangar that Tibbetts and his group used back in the B-29 days when they were training. The hangar they have down there is, let me swing over towards it, looks like it's about to fall down, as do almost all. These are the buildings. These are all pre-World War II wooden hangars. And this place has been inactive for years and years, and evidently the Air Force has decided to use it, at least during the summer, to cut down on the cost of flying out to the range. They bring their airplanes in here, haul the fuel in, and then can take off from here. And within 10 minutes be out somewhere where they can do whatever they do. 2 F-15s took off just as we came in, and 2 more have just taken off. We're going to wait around here for a while, watch a few of them land. We may even wander down there and see if we can get a little closer. Here you can see some more of the buildings on the old flight line in Wendover. There are a few wooden buildings behind these, and beyond that pretty much nothing. I'll swing around here and you can see the old control tower, and beyond it edge of some mountains right outside of town. And in fact, base leg for runway 12 that I came in is about 100 feet on top of those rocks. It's not a place you'd want to come into at night if you weren't familiar with it. Here's a little different picture of what is now the local terminal building with the Falcon sitting in front of it. There are about 4 kids living in there, haven't found any adults yet. And they've got a few airplanes in this hangar. the F-15s are coming in. This is the last bunch for the evening. A couple of them just came over. One landed earlier and had some sort of trouble, and they're having to tow him in. You can see him off in the distance. I'll try to zoom in on this one on final and catch him as he touches down. They hold the nose up to get a lot of aerodynamic braking with the big wing, and I guess that keeps them from having to use drag chutes. This airplane is not an F-15 like all the rest. I think it's an F-16, but it landed earlier and all the fire trucks went after it, so it obviously was out on the range and had something go wrong with it. In fact, he has his arresting hook hanging down. Train. We're on the Durango and Silverton Railroad, which is a narrow gauge steam locomotive powered train that runs from Durango, Colorado up through the mountains to the little mining town of Silverton. We're about 10 miles out of Durango right now, and we're climbing some pretty steep grades. Whistle as he signals another crossing in for the town of Rockwood. Come around another curve, I'll try to get a picture of the engine running ahead of the train opposite. There's a good view of the engine huffing and puffing its way up the tracks here as we parallel the Animas River Gorge. We're at an elevation of about 8,000 feet, and somebody in a Mooney is flying through here. You can see the engine just blew off some steam for some reason as we came around this corner. Maybe it's just for the photographers. There are a number of rapids along here in the river, and also along here you can see a number of places where there are rails in the water sticking out, where floods over the last 100 years that this railroad's been in existence have washed out the rails. And in fact, years ago, about 80 years ago, in fact, they had a big train wreck in here as it came by a section where the rails had been washed out and the train fell in the river. Hope that doesn't happen to us today. You stopped just north of the Wilderness Guest Ranch at a tank to take on some water. You can see the engineer and brakeman, I guess, off, and they walk along and check for hot boxes and a few things like that. Pretty good flow of water in the river right here, as you can see. Zoom in on the train engine here. Getting a little smoky back this way.
Yeah, there's some water. Yeah, they must have used that other one. Yeah, that's no doubt.
Now we're approaching Silverton, and the grade level's out a little bit. I don't know if you can tell in the rocks along the creek, but they're all stained red, which is from the acid leached out of the mine dumps in Silverton. As you get further downstream, that acid is dissipated and the rocks aren't red anymore. You can see a little smoke that we're leaving in the Animas Canyon. We're also pretty much covered with cinders by this. We're in downtown Silverton, Colorado, having just gotten off the train a few minutes ago. We've had lunch already, and this is Main Street of Silverton. Most of the buildings have been repainted and redecorated to look like they had looked 50 to 100 years ago. Main Street is paved, as you can see, but it's just about the only paved street in town. The rest of the town is still gravel roads. I'll swing around here, and this fairly newly painted building is the Grand Imperial Hotel that's been here for ever since Silverton was here about 100 years ago, but's been obviously refurbished to make it look a lot better. The town still has a significant amount of mining activity that goes on in the mountains around it. We're at an elevation of 9,200 feet, I think, aren't we, Guy? So we're fairly high up, and the tops of the mountains are in the 11 to 12,000 foot range. I'll turn the camera around here and go up, look up towards the mountains. You can see a couple of mines in the center part of the picture. The light-colored piles of rock are mine tailings, and right in the center of the picture is a older mine that looks like it hasn't been worked in a long time. Let me zoom in on it and see if we can pick up anything. You can see part of the old mining equipment outside the tunnel itself, although you can't see the tunnel. There are probably 40 or 50 mines in the Silverton area, most of which are no longer active, although one of the major gold mines in the United States that's still working is here in Silverton.
It's on, isn't it?
Guy's taking a picture of Chavago's restaurant here in Silverton. We just wandered up and down the main street looking at the few gift shops. Behind Silverton is a slide area on one of the tall mountains here. Can you tip it up a little bit, Guy, to get to the top of the mountain? In the wintertime, snow accumulates very heavy in some of the valley areas, and then they have till it gets heavy enough, and then they have a snow slide, and when the snow slides down, it knocks down all the trees. And as a result, you end up with a path with no trees in it. Because of the snow slides every year, it knocks everything out of its way. Peak of that mountain is at about 11,500 to 12,000 feet. A fellow just walked by a few minutes ago and said that every now and then people with hang gliders jump off that mountain. And in fact, next weekend, Memorial Day, they're going to have a hang glider meet out here. Looks a little high to me, though. Inside there? Both green lights?
Yeah.
Well, tell us what you're taking a picture of, Guy.
Okay, I'm zooming in. See, there's mine tours over there. See that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big old building with a sign that says Mine Tours. I guess it's where you sign up for them. A couple doors down from that's the post office, and then beyond that's the steeple. Looks like the city or the hall or the courthouse. Can you get a picture of that?
Yeah. I got it.
Okay, now you can move it a little better.
Right.
You got the handle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there.
We'll see how good your cinematography is here when we take this home and take a look at it.
See the tops of the mountains out there?
Okay.
Up there, you might be able to see an S on that mountain. It stands for Silverton. And
You got to get into the picture.
okay, up there's an S that stands for Silverton. And there's a whole bunch of mountains around at Silverton. Some of them had mines in them. All up and around in there, all have mines all in them. And here's Dad.
I guess that's all you got to say. We're on off the beaten path here on a side street of Silverton, next to one of the old buildings. And I'll take a picture down an alley here. This area is pretty much like it's always been. There are a lot of people, I'm sure, live up here working in the tourist trade, but there are also some people who just live here, work in the mines or work in the smelter, things of that sort. It's a very nice day. We hope to, well, we're going to be getting back on the train here in about a half an hour, and we'll get a few more pictures out of the train on the way back down since we'll be on the other side of the canyon. And we don't get back to Durango till about 5:30. We'll get in the plane and head somewhere east to southeast towards Texas. If we have time, we might run over these mountains to a little town of Creed, Colorado, but we'll kind of play that by ear.
This one doesn't have to do that.
Nope.
How come?
I guess it doesn't need one. Whistles, what's that mean, guy? I guess we stop to see if there's anybody at this ranch.
What's the matter, you?
No, I didn't. I told you I was going to Christmas with you.
Cattle cars, looks like.
They look like cattle cars. Look inside of them. If you look inside of them, you can see them. From what's it called again? Silverton. We're on our way back from Silverton, and we're getting ready to go out over a river, or more like a lake, sort of like. We're slowing down. We just stopped at a ranch to see if anybody was going to get on. You can take the train to certain ranches along the way. You just get off of it there and get back on them the next morning or whenever. Right now it's in the evening. Yeah, it started to rain on us a little bit, so we had to get it out of an umbrella, and it started to get real cold. So it's going to take us about, you can look out there and you can see that river or lake. Maybe not, and our car number was G3, but I said another number, 405. We're 37 and 38. I'm 38, he's 37.
We're coming into a little bit closer to Durango. The valley widens out quite a bit here, and as you can see, there's a number of houses and a lot more development. The notch in the mountains just to the center of the picture is about where Durango is. Where just as you make that corner, the Animas Valley opens up into a pretty wide plain, and that's right where the town of Durango is. Alongside the railroad, in a lot of places, are a number of ties and old rails where they've done some replacement, and it's not worth hauling the old stuff back to town, evidently, so they just leave it here. Across the valley are some cliffs formed by some very rust-colored red rocks, which is the Hermosa Formation. Had it kind of overcast today, and I'm not sure it'll show up real well. Engineer's blowing off a little excess steam out of the boiler as we come around this curve. He's keeping the fire up, but we're coasting almost all the way downhill, so we're not getting all the cinders that we were getting going up to Silverton, and I guess that's why he has to blow off a little steam. Coming into the town of Hermosa, Colorado, which is why the red rocks up on the cliffs are called the Hermosa Formation. Going by a glider field up here in the north of Durango, in the middle of the valley. It must require flying a pretty tight pattern, pretty much walled in on either side by rocks. That's the east face of the canyon, and I'll swing around.
It shows you
See how close the west face is. I was just coming back from a bathroom run. We're about 2 miles from the station. He thought he'd use it one more time because the sign said they couldn't use it in the station. Nice looking Luscombe parked here at this glider field. An outlaw who didn't catch us. This is the contact between the red Hermosa formation and the lighter sandstones of the Entrada formation. Nice looking little campground we're going by. Coming into downtown Durango. Coming into the station.
All on the same day?
Let's go.
Number 476. That's Coldus. On the guy. Toting some of our baggage.
Taking off from Albuquerque International, climbing out to the southwest on our way to Houston.
7 Juliet, make a slight left turn to intercept the freeway through the canyon, cleared for takeoff.
And we're over the Sandia Range, which runs east of Albuquerque. And we're shooting out to some higher mountains fairly close to us. Taking a picture now back towards Sandia Peak, which is the tall mountain just east of Albuquerque. In Hobbs, New Mexico and Midland, Texas at 11,500 above the clouds. About an hour and a half since we left Albuquerque, and we're taking some pictures of some oil and gas wells out here on the high plains of southeast New Mexico and west Texas. Wings level, guy. And you can see some cloud shadows on the ground, and it looks like the way the clouds are moving, we've got probably a bit of a headwind. It's nice and smooth though above the clouds. As we get closer and closer to the Gulf of Mexico, the moisture content picks up, and we'll see more clouds probably. 92 degrees on the ground, but it's 40 degrees up here, so it's pretty nice, and we're going to stay up here as long as our fuel will hold out of it. Guy, we need to turn to heading of 12012.
This way?
Nope. Left to make the numbers smaller. There you go.
What, 12 you mean?
Yeah. There, that looks good. Take a picture out to the southwest. You can notice that it looks pretty much like it does everywhere else. Also take a picture of our baggage compartment. You can see we're kind of disorganized after a week up here. And guys doing the flying, we're getting into a little bit of bumps here and there. Passing by Seminole, Texas. So I guess we must have crossed the New Mexico-Texas line here fairly recently. This will come out, but we'll take a picture anyhow. Why don't you look up at the camera guy and say something?
Hi. Take a picture of the instruments.
Okay, we'll turn it around here and get the panel. I wanted a picture of the instruments, so there they are.
You got it zoomed in?
Well, we can't zoom too much with the fisheye. We get it when I take my hand away, we get some reflections in the lens.
Well, we're back in Houston, and I thought I would show kind of where we went on the trip. I've got a jet chart up here on the wall that shows pretty much our itinerary. The chart doesn't go all the way down to Houston, so I can't show that part. The edge of the chart here is just about the area of Wink, Texas, which is near Midland, New Mexico up here. We took the southerly route to California, stopped in Kerrville about here, well, which is off the map, flew through past El Paso, got some gas at a little airport here, Fabens, just southeast of El Paso. Spent the night here at Lordsburg, New Mexico. It's where we met Grace the Ace. Next day we left Lordsburg. Let me pin this map down so it doesn't blow around too much in the wind. Flew past Wilcox here. As we got past through the mountain range here just west of Wilcox, we took a turn to the south down towards Tombstone, which is about 30 miles from the Mexican border. Turned back around, flew near Mount Lemmon right over the top of Tucson, and stopped at Marana Air Park where a bunch of the airplanes are stored. Spent several hours there. Then we took off, continued northeast up towards Phoenix till we're about 30 miles west of Phoenix where we picked up Interstate 10, which is also the major airway going to Los Angeles, and then flew across the Sonoran Desert portion here of southern California and Arizona, making a stop here at Bermuda Dunes for some gas just before Banning Pass. Took off Bermuda Dunes, went through Banning Pass with some pretty low visibilities, and then on out into the Los Angeles basin, finally landing here at Corona. Long Beach is right down here, but we, of course, had the car that we were able to borrow at Corona, so we drove to Long Beach and then back. Then that evening we left Corona, flew over the San Gabriel Mountains, had to get up to about 11,000 feet, descended on into Tehachapi, where we spent the night up in the mountains. Tehachapi is about halfway between Los Angeles and Bakersfield. Next morning when we left Tehachapi, we just flew about 20 miles out to Mojave Airport, and then left Mojave and detoured around to the south of Edwards Air Force Base, and flew through some more of the desert, up towards Las Vegas, across Lake Mead, across St. George, landing at Cedar City, where we got gas. Then we left Cedar City in the afternoon and had to go north of Cedar City, both to gain altitude and also find a lower pass here to get up into the Ponsauget Plateau past Panguis to get into Bryce Canyon Airport. You can't see it on here, but right here is an 11,000-foot peak. Then, of course, we spent the night at Bryce Canyon. Next day, flew through the central valleys of Utah, landing at Manti for some gas, and then on into the Provo and central Utah, or Provo and Utah valleys, past Provo, got gas at Salt Lake No. 2 Airport, and headed on out to Wendover. These blue areas are restricted areas where the Air Force, Navy, and Army all use for both ground and air-to-ground gunnery practice and missile testing and all sorts of things. So the only way to get to Wendover is due east along Interstate 80. I guess it is the old Highway 40, which runs straight out of Salt Lake right into Wendover. Then after spending a few hours in Wendover, we turned around, backtracked back to the Salt Lake Valley, around the Oquirrh Mountains, back and spent the night in Provo. Next day, left Provo, flew over the north end of the Wasatch Plateau, out into the East Utah Desert, down past Moab and Dove Creek, Here we got into Colorado and landed here at Durango. The train out of Durango leaves here and goes up to Silverton right here. Now this different color, these are the high mountains of Colorado. Here's Denver up here. Took the train to Silverton and back. Then the next evening, after we got off the train, we flew through a pretty sparsely populated part of New Mexico and spent the night at Albuquerque. And then the next day, in the last bit of film that's on there, a video from there, we were somewhere between Albuquerque and Roswell and Hobbs, and then headed on in, stopped at Fredericksburg, and got to Houston that evening. You can see now our latest addition, come here Johanna, is a cat whose name is, what's her name, Johanna?
Sweetie Pie.
What?
Sweetie Pie.
Sweetie Pie the cat. We've had Sweetie Pie for about 2 weeks. Got her when she was 5 weeks old and about half this size. You stand there, Johanna, and I'll zoom in. Here, Guy, you can talk about Sweetie Pie. Hold that. Okay. Tell them that we didn't have Sweetie Pie in the picture when we were talking. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Right then, we didn't have Sweetie Pie in the picture. The camera was pointed up too high. Sweetie Pie likes to claw and play a lot. She sleeps with Johanna a lot. This morning, she came out of Johanna's room and came into my room, and I heard her scratching on my laundry basket. I didn't know what it was. I was pretty sure it was Sweetie Pie. I go there, and sure enough, it was. And it gets under our mom and dad's bed a lot, and it sleeps. And it sleeps sometimes under her bed or in the bed with him. One day we're looking for her when we came home from school. She had climbed down under the covers and was laying up on the pillow of my mom and dad's bed.
Smile.
She likes to play a lot. She crawls. She sometimes doesn't like to be held in certain ways. Right now she's maybe being a little scared, clawing into Johanna. Well, it was like, we took her outside one time when we bring her in. We set her down in the grass the very first day. And that was the only time she's been out, except another day during the cooler weather. We're still having it. But she well, we took her outside and we took her over to see Mr. and Mrs. O.D. Well, when we took her outside, we put her down and I picked her up. She was climbing straight up my shoulder because she was pretty scared because of the cold, and she had never been out there yet before. But then she kind of settled down and didn't mind it so much. Right now she wants to maybe crawl down Johanna's back.
Hold her still, Johanna.
Right now is trying to take some close-up Sweetie Pies and not cooperating though. She doesn't like it too much. Now she's meowing. No. No, see.
Come on, meow.
Say something, Sweetie Pie.
It's the 25th of September, 1983. We just got back from Sunday school, and Guy's holding Miss Sweetie Pie. And she's not doesn't like this too much. She's trying to get out of Guy's lap. Would you please say something, Miss Sweetie Pie? She likes to play with things. Anything she sees moving, she tries to attack it. Say something, Miss Sweetie.
Yesterday we went to Yesterday we went to the Texas A&M football game, and with Mr. Nubbs and Miss Emma, and
Miss Sweetie Pie is a very, very active cat. She loves people, but she does not like people who don't treat her right. She likes her mommy, her uncle, her grandma, and her grandpa, and a few of my friends. Now, I don't know what to say. Miss Sweetie Pie, would you please say something? end of our news series.